Hi, Logan. It's great to see you again. How are you doing today?
I'm here safely, so I'm okay.
Okay. That's good to hear that you feel like you're safe in this place and you're here safely. Um, so I want to ask what is maybe a positive moment from this last week, from the last time we talked?
Positive moment is that my mom got home from work every day safe.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm sure she was very excited to see you too. Um, could you list maybe, if you're willing, an exact moment that you maybe felt like you had the anxieties we talked about last week, um, within this week? Any specifics?
My mom and dad went out, just the two of them, the
Okay.
other night, and I stayed with my grandma, and I she wanted to play games with me, and I couldn't even focus on the games. It was just so hard that my parents left me. I just don't I was just so scared the whole time that something was gonna happen, that they were gonna get hurt or sick, and that they then weren't gonna come back. My grandma tried really hard to distract me with games and playing. She even like made me my favorite treat, but I was just so worried. There were a couple of times where I just sat and like watched out the window to see if they were back yet. Um, that was probably the scariest, was when I just sat at the window watching, wondering why they weren't back yet. That After that, my grandma then brought out the treat, and that did make it better. But that was the scariest part, was watching out the window.
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, it sounds like your grandma cares about you a lot, and was able to be with you in that moment. So, um, I'm really glad to hear that you had someone with you in a moment that you were feeling anxious and maybe a bit scared and fearful. And that's not fun to be able um, to think about all the bad things that could happen. That is something that definitely weighs on somebody. Um, and considering that, and also what we discussed in kind of our initial conversation, I did some research and reflecting on my end. Um, and I'm curious if you would be open to using the term separation anxiety. We can talk more about what that looks like, but I want to hear kind of how that term makes you feel, how that term makes you feel as you hear it, as you consider what it might mean, just initial thoughts.
But I don't. What does anxious mean? I don't think that I'm anxious. I think that, it's totally understandable that I would miss my parents when they leave. And, there are a lot of people who get into car accidents and get hurt and get sick. And I think that it's understandable that I am nervous and worried about that. So um I don't know why me worrying about my parents is such a big deal, and why that would be considered anxious.
Yeah, that is a totally valid feeling, and I hear you. Um, yeah. I can tell that you strongly believe that your parents are in danger when they're not around you. And yes, the world is scary, and the world does have a lot of different things that could go wrong. Um, and also, I know in talking with your parents, kind of in our initial assessment, that they're also a little worried. Um, about the degree to which you're worrying about them. Um, so I'm wondering, you said that you don't really understand what anxiety means. Would I be able to kind of clarify what anxiety can look like in your body and kind of break down what that big word means into more understandable bits?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So anxiety can take a lot of different forms. There are people who feel it more in their bodies. So sometimes that can look like a racing heart, or maybe your breathing gets faster and faster. Or maybe you realize you've been holding your breath because you've been feeling a lot of feelings around something. Um, Additionally, there's some people who have specific events or specific things that make them kind of feel that like quickening heart rate or quicker breath. For some people, it could be big crowds or it could be a fear of heights or different things like that. There's different things that can make us feel that way. For other people, it might look like more thought-driven anxieties. So that'll be more thoughts that feel like they just keep going and going and going, and you can't even pinpoint what you're thinking. It could also be just a hyper fixation or just like a really targeted focus on one specific thought, and you keep thinking it over and over and over. That can also be a sign of anxiety. Um, so it looks different, and different things can cause it for different people. And some people experience anxiety all the time as well. Um, so does that make sense? Do you have any questions about that so far?
Doesn't everybody just think all the time? Doesn't everybody just like, don't they? I mean, I thought that everybody just had, you know, thoughts flying through their mind all the time. Isn't that something that everybody experiences?
Right. That is a very good question. And I think it's a very valid question as well, especially as we're experiencing those racing thoughts and we're experiencing different fears and um, just different emotions regarding events. Um, Although people have thoughts that run through their mind throughout the day, there is a degree to which those thoughts can be more anxious or less anxious. And that has to do with a part of our brain that's called the amygdala. So that's a really big word, but basically, that little guy in your brain is in charge of your fight and your flight response. Have you ever heard of that before?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So that response is natural and it's what keeps us alive. And that is something where when we're in danger, like say we are hiking on a path and we see a bear, that is what kicks in. And either we want to fight the bear or we want to run away from the bear or we freeze because we're just shocked to see a bear. Um, and so, like I said, that is something, the amygdala and the fight or flight response is something that keeps us alive. But for people who experience more of those racing thoughts or those anxieties around things happening bad to people that we love, that is when our amygdala, so that little part of our brain, is kind of working overtime. And so it's thinking
It's
that
called an amygdala.
amygdala. I know it's a
Amygdala.
big
Amygdala?
word.
Did I get it
Amygdala.
right? Amygdala?
You
Okay.
got it. You got it. I know. It's a really big word, and I sometimes get tripped up on it too. But basically, when the amygdala is working overtime and is working extra, it makes it so that when we look at things and when we're in situations, sometimes it cues a danger response when the danger isn't actually there. So, for example, you might be on a hike and maybe last time you saw a bear, but this time you see a bush, but your brain thinks, oh no, it's going to be the bear again. So then you start to have anxieties. Um, is this making any sense for you?
Is that kind of when I like get dizzy and really sweaty and stuff? Like, is that
Yes.
kind of what happens sometimes?
Absolutely. So that goes back
Okay.
to kind of the biological, physiological, basically what happens in our physical body when we're feeling anxious. So when our amygdala is working really hard and is trying to make sense of a situation, then our body is also going to be showing that it's working through a situation in that way. So it'll have, like you were saying last time, you might have those headaches, you might have those stomach aches. And so naming